this moment, face into the wind. Northern places we may meet again.
I find with those kind of classic Students on Ice expeditions that there would be at some point in the expedition where you just look around to all the youth there and all the staff and you just realize like, whoa, we're all family here and we're a very happy family. We're all having this amazing experience together. We're bonded. We're all saying hi to each other as going through. And the big expeditions, they were like 200 people on expedition. It was just wild. Those are moments where I just realized that I'm exactly where I want to be and I'm as happy as I've ever been. Those moments just really stand out.
That's Roger Bull. He is head of operations for the National Biodiversity Cryobank of Canada and the Laboratory of Molecular Biodiversity at the Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa. Roger has a deep passion for Arctic research and conservation and has contributed extensively to the museum's Arctic biodiversity initiatives. He's also been actively involved with Students on Ice for a long time, joining in on expeditions since 2014, where he has shared his enthusiasm for fieldwork and a deeper understanding of Arctic ecosystems. I'm David McGuffin, producer of The Greatest Classroom on Earth. Our host, Geoff Green, had planned to record this introduction while on expedition on the Polar Prince, but things got very busy and deadlines loomed, and as Geoff likes to say, flexibility is key. Geoff and Roger recorded this conversation on board the Polar Prince along the Labrador coast during our Innu Nation expedition in early July. Now, I'm handing the tiller back to Geoff. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Geoff Green, the founder and expedition leader of Students on Ice. In 1999, an idea was born. Imagine if we could bring youth at the beginning of their lives on educational expeditions to the polar regions, two cornerstones of the global ecosystem and windows to the world, and how that inspiring experience might shape their perspectives and even their futures.
Good morning, Students on Ice. It's going to be a great day.
In December of 2000, we made our maiden ship voyage, bringing a group of youth on a journey to Antarctica. An incredible journey of discovery, connection, and learning in what we would later call the greatest classroom on Earth. It's hard to believe, but Students on Ice is now in its 25th year. Since that first expedition, we've taken more than 4,000 students to the Arctic and the Antarctic, together with teams of educators, elders, artists, researchers, and leaders from over 55 countries. Our mission to connect youth to nature, culture, environmental leadership and stewardship, and even to themselves has remained steady in this changing world. We now have a global network of incredible alumni doing incredible things. This podcast is part of a year-long celebration of Students on Ice, a chance to reflect on the experiences, the connections, and impacts through conversations with the people who were there, getting their stories in their own words.
I'm really thrilled to be joined today by Roger Bull on the Greatest Classroom on Earth podcast. Roger, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks very much, Geoff. Good to be here.
And where is here? We are in an unusual, we're actually sitting inside of a mobile container lab.
We are, yes, that's right. So we're on the Polar Prince right now, headed to Northern Labrador on the Innu Nation expedition. And right now we're sitting in one of our science spaces. So this is a container lab, which we actually used on Canada C3 as well. So I spent quite a bit of time in this lab. We call it the Canadensis lab, or CAN lab for short, because it's a sea container.
A lot of history in this lab, and it's just we're just getting started on this journey. It's late June, and we are heading up the coast of Newfoundland towards the coast of Labrador and the Innu Nation. We'll get to that in a second, but this is a very expeditionary podcast because right now we have our microphones set up on. I'm looking at a DeWalt tool chest. I don't know what yours is on.
I don't know. I think there's some eDNA sampling equipment in this container in front of me. Yeah.
It's very apropos. It's been an exciting day already. We've seen some things out there.
Yes, absolutely. We saw a humpback whale go by. I think you missed that one, Geoff. Sorry. Hopefully you'll see the next one.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah, no problem. Saw a pod of orcas the day before, which I think you also missed. So anyway, hopefully
somebody has to work around here, right?
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's a great start. And got a few expeditions ahead. But let's talk about you, Roger. The great thing about this podcast for our 25th anniversary of Students on Ice is talking to alumni, and you are an alumni of many expeditions. But what about young Roger? Where did you grow up?
Oh, yeah, good question. I was actually born in Halifax.
Oh,
Which is a really helpful thing to mention to the deckhands here and the crew. As soon as you say you're born in Halifax, they're like, "Oh, all right, you're okay, you're okay."
you got street cred.
Yeah. Now, we left Halifax when I was 1. I don't tell them that part. But then we went to Southern Alberta with my family in the Rocky Mountains in a park called Waterton Lakes National Park, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And there, my dad was the superintendent of
Was he?
that park. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Tony Bull. And so that's where my first memories are, and I think it was really formative. So I grew up in the Rocky Mountains. We literally had a mountain in our backyard. We literally had bears on our front porch. And I was just scrambling all over those mountains. Yeah, we have photos where it looks like I'm just about to fall off a cliff.
So is that where you got your spirit of adventure?
Sure. Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Like, as the superintendent, my dad got to be involved in a lot of things, and we just tagged along. So, and then we moved to Ottawa when I was a toddler, and then I grew up there from, kindergarten onwards.
And that's where you are today because, I mean, you were a staff member at the Canadian Museum of Nature, and I think that's how we first met.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I started at the Canadian Museum of Nature 20 years ago, this year, actually, right out of grad school. And started being a technician in the DNA lab 20 years ago. And so absolutely, the first exposure I had to you guys in person was you came on a tour because you'd come through a tour of the Research and Collections building at the Canadian Museum of Nature. And
where our office is.
Where your office is, absolutely. And yeah, I remember this group of wide-eyed, kind of shy young people coming through. This would have been right before the expedition. We gave them a big tour of our amazing collections at the Museum of Nature.
So that was maybe around 2005, do you think?
It would have been 2006.
Wow, almost 20 years ago. So right after you started at the Museum of Nature. And I think you've been involved pretty much ever since.
Yeah, I think we definitely hosted more tours, but I didn't actually get onto an expedition until 2014.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2014 was my first one, so it's been 11 years now.
And what do you remember about that first Students on Ice expedition?
I mean, I remember just being so excited that, like, I was finally chosen. The
chosen one.
The chosen one, yeah. The Canadian Museum of Nature. We all just kind of wait in line, hoping that we'll get tapped to be an educator on the expedition. First time in Greenland, that was a big first. Going through the town of Uinipekᵁ, just beautiful, like seeing that town for the first time. And then just feeling really kind of nervous about it all, honestly, just feeling as if I didn't know enough to, impart to the young people. And yeah, so just swimming in a lot of uncertainty, but I pulled it off.
You did. You did. Well, and I think you've played so many different roles over the years. Like sometimes you've been kind of like botanist. Sometimes you've been the bird guy. Recently, you've certainly been the eDNA, environmental DNA specialist and scientific lead for these more research expeditions that we've had. But you've played a lot of roles.
I have, yeah, and it was really with Canada C3 that I got into science logistics of ship-based stuff. Again, swimming in uncertainty, like total imposter syndrome for sure, but really just a testament to the power of experiential education. Get yourself on a ship, pretend you know what you're doing.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. Here I am.
You've I don't know how much faking you've actually done, but you've always been a huge contributor and big part of the team, and we're lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have that. Like this Museum of Nature Students on Ice partnership's been so incredible in so many ways, and so many expeditions we've had staff from
the start. I understand.
From the very beginning.
Kathy Conlon, I guess, on the first Antarctic expedition.
That's right. Marine biologist, diver extraordinaire, and Antarctic specialist. And then I had probably 20 different staff members over the years.
I'd say.
But you've become one of the regulars.
One of the mainstays. Yeah. What an honor.
What places and experiences really have stood out to you over those last 10 years?
Great question. There's so much. I mean, obviously, seeing polar bears. That time that we went into Iqaluit and we had to get all the students to the ship in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's been the topic of a few podcasts. It's funny.
I bet it was.
I don't know how but the great escape from Iqaluit, I suppose that we call it.
Yeah. But then we were rewarded the next day by just an amazing viewing of polar bears really up close. So, I mean, things like that are memorable, of course. But, I find with those kind of classic students on ice expeditions where you had, tons of students, that there would be at some point in the expedition where you just look around to all the youth there and all the staff and you just realize like, whoa, we're all family here and we're a very happy family, right? We're all having this amazing experience together. We're bonded. We're all saying hi to each other as going through. And, the big expeditions, they were like 200 people on an expedition. It was just wild. But those are moments where I just realized that I'm exactly where I want to be and I'm as happy as I've ever been. This is a fantastic experience. Those moments just really stand out.
Are there some people that stand out, either colleagues or youth that you've worked with?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely when I was like the botanist or the plant dude, as I was being called one year, it was really interesting to see people kind of develop this interest in botany that they didn't know that they had at all. And there was one young fellow, and I'm going to forget his name right now, but he was from Norway. This was the first year I was on there. And he just picked up a plant book and soon joined my workshops and soon was just like right there beside me the whole time, just super curious. Connections like that are really special. I still have students who email me and report how they're doing, and they'll, what we did with the plant workshops is we'd collect plants on the tundra, press them, dry them, and then do an activity on the ship where we do collage with these pressed plants. Super popular. Everyone really loved it. And students will like take a picture of their framed pressed plants from the Arctic and like send it to me. Just looking at this the other day, just remembering our expedition. Thank you so much.
And some of those pressed plants have gone back to the museum collection.
Absolutely.
As well as, like a lot of the work that you've been a part of, it's not just for educational purposes. It's actually for the museum.
Yeah, absolutely. With the pressed plants, there's some in the collection at the National Herbarium, as we call it, the plant collection, where we have over 1 million pressed specimens. And so quite a few in there have Students on Ice credited on that collection label for posterity.
And on the C3 trip, all of the eDNA that we collected.
Yes. Yeah. We don't have that yet in the Cryobank, which I manage at the Museum of Nature. I think all of that is still DFO, probably Nanaimo, Fisheries and Oceans, but maybe we'll get it.
I know there was just a big paper that came out on that biodiversity study, but I think you're right. It might be in DFO's hands still. So what is a cryobank?
What is a cryobank? Well, cryo tells you that it's cold, and really cold. Essentially what it is, it's a facility.
Like the cryosphere.
Like the cryosphere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But your office is quite a crazy facility. It's like
it is
James Bond sort of thing.
It looks pretty futuristic. Yeah. People come in there and they mention Jurassic Park. I also wonder if Walt Disney is frozen in there. No, he's not. So what we have is a fleet of freezers cooled by liquid nitrogen that maintain temperatures of minus 160 degrees Celsius, certainly colder than anywhere on planet Earth. It's the temperature on the dark side of the moon, I'm told.
Well, how cold again?
Minus 160.
Jeez.
160
okay.
Celsius. Yeah. And so that's how we store tissue samples from plants and animals to really preserve their DNA code, okay, their genome, right? That instruction book of genetic information that we all have within each of our cells. And so we're really looking to preserve genomes from nature. Super important in this time. We know that we're in a period of biodiversity crisis because of the human impact on this planet. So these genomes, unfortunately are disappearing. So we want to preserve them, but we also want to use that information within those genomes to hopefully help conserve what's being lost or what's threatened. So we can use that information to look at population health of caribou, for example, which will hopefully give us tools to figure out how to increase that population health.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
You've often described this as creating a library of this eDNA.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So we call it a bank, Cryobank, because it is quite secure. We lock the doors, but also the security comes from that ultra cold temperature. That DNA is not going to break down at all. So it's really locked in time. But mainly I do think of it as a library. I think of each one of those vials as a book on the shelves of this library. And it's information that we can read actually at the Museum of Nature in our DNA lab. We have all the tools there to extract the DNA out of that tissue and to read the code of genes, right, in ACGT, that four-letter alphabet of the DNA code. And like a library, people can borrow the books. We post online our holdings of tissues, and biodiversity researchers can look there and see if there's stuff that they want, and then they contact us. We make them do a bit of paperwork, and then we send them little subsamples of those tissue samples for their biodiversity research.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do some eDNA collection in the next month or so.
Yeah, absolutely, we will.
Particularly, I think, on the third project this summer, we're looking to get samples for Atlantic salmon, which may be moving further north up the coast of Labrador, which is a real narrative for helping us tell the climate change story, the biodiversity story, the cultural story to that epic species. So that'll be really fun to see the results from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've joked over the years that when people have asked, what's Students on Ice? I say, well, we cryogenically freeze youth for the future. Very popular with parents. But maybe we actually could. You could help us out there. Now that
Sure. Yeah. I think we still have a few things to work out before we can actually do that, but you never know.
Make me some ethical issues and some liability problems. Yeah, we will not do that. But so what are you looking forward to on the expedition we're on that right now? Because what keeps you coming back? What is it?
Oh, what keeps me coming back? Well, I like to get away from the office for sure. Like a lot of the work that we do has us at the computer a lot, sending emails, building relationships, working with data. So it's really important to me to get away from the desk and to be reminded of, what's at the heart of everything that we do, which is natural habitats and wildlife and nature. So this is an opportunity to really connect with that for sure. I love ships now, thanks to Students on Ice. I really had no ship experience before Students on Ice. Obviously about the love of ships, and that keeps me coming back for sure. But this is a really special project, working with the Innu Nation. That's a really important thing for me. It's a learning experience for me and for us at the Canadian Museum of Nature of how to do research in the right way with reconciliation in mind, collaborating with Indigenous groups about the questions that they want answered rather than coming into a community with our questions, not communicating with the people there and just leaving, which is kind of the old school way of doing research in the North. So it feels like we're really on the right track.
It sure does. This is the third year that we've collaborated with Innu Nation. And it's been a great success story, I think. Lots of learning on all sides, new partnerships, and then, of course, new knowledge collecting data in these two marine zones in particular in the Innu Nation, and capacity building as well, because a lot of Innu youth are participating. So they're learning from you. And maybe they'll, I think all expeditions on Students on Ice, you're inspiring these future botanists and eDNA specialists and
Scuba divers.
because you're a big part of the dive team on these expeditions in particular.
I am. Yes. Yep. I'm really lucky to be a scuba diver, and we go down there. I work with my colleague at the museum, Amanda Savoie, who's a seaweed specialist. And so to study seaweeds, you have to get down there.
If you don't love seaweed, you will after you hang out with Amanda.
Absolutely, yeah.
Seaweed is kind of the answer to all of our problems, isn't it?
I agree. No, I believe that 100%. There's so much potential for us to feed ourselves with seaweed, but it also fixes carbon, puts oxygen into the water, provides habitat for animals. 100%.
Yeah, it is incredible. So you'll be diving probably twice a day once we get going.
Weather permitting, yeah, we'll be diving up to twice a day, which is a really special honor for sure. And we're diving with our colleagues at the Huntsman Marine Center as well, Claire Goodwin and Aidan, and they'll be looking at invertebrates. So, yeah, especially sponges. That's Claire's specialty.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome when you guys bring back some little critters every day and have a show and tell with all of us on board.
We'll have a show and tell. We'll also bring up urchins, and we love to do some urchin shucking.
Yes, I remember.
To see if the students are into that. Mostly they're not.
Now, you've been diving really far north, up in Cambridge Bay. What's that been like?
That's been fantastic. Yeah, we've been working with Polar Knowledge Canada over the last 3 years to dive in Cambridge Bay, so in that chunk of the Northwest Passage. And as you might imagine, not a whole lot of scuba diving happens in the north. So there's so much discovery really available there. So we've really been looking to find where are the kelp patches up there? What's the diversity within those kelp patches? And it's been a great adventure. Beautiful crystal clear water up there. You see aerial photos. It looks like you're in the Caribbean. A little colder than the Caribbean, but quite stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, it's an area that we still have a lot to learn about. And Canada, but the globe is on this path for protecting 30% of the ocean and land by 2030. That's only 5 years from now, so we have a lot to do between now and then. But we're committed. A lot of what Students on Ice is doing during this United Nations Ocean Decade is trying to support the 30 by 30 targets, and I think some of the data that we're collecting is going to help in that decision-making process.
I hope so. Yeah, you don't know what to protect.
No.
Until you know what's under the water, until you know where the habitats are. You can make some guesses, but before you do a full biodiversity survey like we're doing here, you don't really know what
and
to protect.
And to protect it properly, not just on paper.
Right. Yes.
Which is, it's one of the challenges that we face in the next few years, not just here in Canada, but beyond. And as we learned on the C3 expedition, when we sailed from coast to coast to coast, 25,000 kilometers around Canada, most of our country's coastline is almost exclusively Indigenous community. So they need to be at the front lines of whatever this looks like in terms of conservation. Again, I think it shows how what we're doing is so important, building that capacity so those youth can eventually be managing or working in those protected areas.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's our hope. We certainly think about that as the dive team too. We really wish we could teach students how to dive on this expedition.
Well, let's work on that.
Yeah. But we're hoping to get them inspired too. And then what's nice about this project and how it's growing is it's turning into a year-long kind of capacity building project. So, we're a month on this ship, but then when we're not on this ship, the learning for the participants should and can continue. And hopefully that can include people getting their diving certifications. And so hopefully, one of these days we'll have some Innu youth actually getting into the water
I
with
have
their
no
dive
doubt,
gear.
because we already
That'd be
have some of the Innu youth working on the archaeological stuff and some of the guardians that are helping out on the land programming. Hopefully Zodiac driving. Of course, many of the Innu team are bear guards,
Yes.
keeping us safe, which is always top priority. So yeah, you've kind of come, in a way, I didn't realize your connection back to parks as a child and nature and wilderness as when in your younger years. We'll be working in some national parks, won't we? Including one of the newest, the Mealy Mountains, in the next few days. What does it all mean to you, and what kind of impact is this having on Roger Bull?
Great question. I spent so much time in natural areas, both when I was a toddler, but then all the way through. Lots of canoe trips in Algonquin Park. That was always...
And you still canoe?
I still canoe, yeah.
I see it on your
Yeah.
your car in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's right, that red canoe. I don't know, Jeff. I mean, these natural areas are just so important. I mean, it's really what brings me joy, is being in these natural areas. And as we know, there's so much pressures on them. So it's a real honor to be involved in work that seeks to understand them better, and therefore theoretically should help us conserve them and preserve them.
What brings you hope?
People ask me that. And it's a tricky question, because I see as scientists, it's kind of our job to, especially biodiversity scientists and at a natural history museum, is to document nature over time, right? We have a very long timeline of specimens at the Museum of Nature, including ones that were collected, for example, on the first Franklin expedition, right? And so really it's our job to keep on doing that, not necessarily to really judge what we're seeing, but obviously what we're seeing is major changes to biodiversity, especially because of things like climate change, especially in the Arctic. We know that all these species ranges are going to be impacted and are going to be changing. Animals are moving north, for example. So in that context, sometimes finding hope is a little challenging because we're really in the trenches every day, understanding that we're in a biodiversity crisis, right? But I guess that's also where the hopefulness comes from, is because the job that I do is consistent with my values, and I think is on the right side of history in terms of human impact on biodiversity. And it's really every day working with people who believe in the importance of biodiversity and who are putting work into understanding it and protecting it that gives me hope. And then certainly being involved in Students on Ice and working with youth who I see are also passionate about it and also believe in the importance of it. This brings hope as well.
Well, thanks for being a part of Students on Ice in such a huge way. And we couldn't have done the last 10 years without you. C3 and all these new projects that we're doing. So really appreciate all of your contributions and being a big part of the family. And speaking of hope, we got to get some more whales out there. So we should get back out. We've been seeing some thick-billed murres and some of that other amazing biodiversity in this part of the eastern part of Canada. Yeah, some puffins.
Some puffins, yeah. Many, many more puffins on the way as we get to the Gannet Islands.
Yeah, so we're making our way to the Gannets, which will effectively be the very first day of our Innu Nation expedition this summer, and away we go. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for being part of the greatest classroom on earth podcast.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for listening. Thanks to the wonderful Sarah Harmer for our theme song, Lancaster Sound. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a review and rating where you listen. And share a link of this episode with family and friends. It's the best way to make sure these conversations reach as many people as possible. And please give us a follow on social media. To learn more about Students on Ice, go to studentsonice.com or soifoundation.org. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Geoff Green.
Feel this moment, face into the wind. Northern voices tell us where we've been. Feel this moment, face into the wind.